Alright, welcome back. So in this video, we are going to render a simple HTML template, and we're not going to see the exact use of EJS just yet because we're already going to see a new concept, and I'm trying to keep it one concept at a time. So yeah, let's just start with that. Yeah. So I'm in my GURM and I'm in the root directory, the web dev course, right? And here I'll make a new directory this time by the name of intermediate express, right? And now I can cd into that, right? And I can clear. Great. So now first off, I'll just do my npm init because we're gonna build a small app to actually do this, right? So npm init, package name is this, version, description, entry point, app.js, everything else remains the same. Great. So now we can start doing things. So first off, I'll install Express, and even before that, I'll make my app.js file, and I'll open it up. And now I'll install Express and EJS. Now you could do separate commands for Express and EJS like this one, and then you could do npmi -x EJS -s EJS again, and that would work fine. But you can also do this. This is also permissible, that you can give all the names of the packages that you want to download by separating them with a space, right? So I'll do this, and this will now install Express and EJS for me. And while I can go here and start writing my code, right? So first off, I'll just get Express, right? Like always, I'll do act is equal to require Express, right? And now the next thing, I have to make routes, and I have to make server, right? All right. So the first thing, we'll set up the server. If we see from here, the port is 3000 like always, right? So I'll do app dot listen 3000 recres, and I'll be using arrow functions from now on, right? Because EJS, this is known as EJS 6, right? ES6, sorry. So ES6 is actually the newer things that have been introduced later, which were not a part of JS earlier. So ES6 is the most famous right now, and if you go to any application being developed in today's date, you will find ES6 there. So arrow functions and all, you should be really comfortable with them by now, because they're just a different syntax. Everything else remains like the normal function, right? So we can do the recres, and I'll do console log server. So now I'll set up my first route. Let's just set up the home route, and I can do recres, and then I can do, first off, just to test if the server is working fine, I'll do res.send working, right? Nothing new till now. So now I can go here and I can do nodemon. So my server is running. Now I'll get my URL from here, and you can press this to open that, right? And I get working. So yeah, my HTML, my server is running fine. So now before we actually render that file, I'll be making the file first now. So let's say I want to print an h1, right? I could do that using res.send, but I want to render a page which has just an h1, right? So for that, I'll first exit the server just so it does not keep running, and I'll make a new file called, let's say, test dot. And now this is the view that we want to render, right? View is basically the page. And even before you do that, so there's one rule, and like by default, all the pages that you're making, all the front end pages that you're making, go inside the views, right? So you'll have to make a folder named views inside this, right? So now you have a folder named views, and then you have to make all your HTML and HTML files inside of this views, right? So yeah, so then I have to make a file inside of views by the name of test dot. Now you might think this might be HTML, but like I told you in the last video, we need this to be EJS, right? And for the example that we're going to see now, HTML will work perfectly fine. But just to keep it consistent throughout the course, I'll start with EJS, right? Right? Great. So I'll make this. So now I can open the file, and my file has been opened. Great. So this is an EJS file right now, right? So you might be thinking, what is EJS syntax that we'll put in here and all of that? But let me tell you, here you can put in the exact same syntax as the HTML, right? And exact HTML will work. So you could like put the HTML tag and the head tag and the body tag and all of those things, but we're just going to put the h1 directly. And this is because you can actually import other EJS documents into this too, which is an advanced EJS concept. We'll see that later on. But for now, you can just see that we are ignoring all the required tags, and we are just putting the content that we want, right? We're not putting all the metadata or all the things, and hence this title will remain the same for now, but we can change that if we want to using the head, right? There's you can just simply use h1 in here. So I'll do h1, and inside this h1 I'll put finally linked document. Great. So now my EJS file has been saved. So first off, how do I actually render that, right? So I'll have to do res dot render. The only thing that changes is instead of send, you do render, and then you give the name of your file. So yeah, test.ejs. So let's see if this is working. If this is working, right? I'll save the file. I'll run that again. It's working. I refresh, and it says finally linked document, which was my h1 inside this test.ejs. Great. So now a couple of things here. First off, this app.js is in this directory, which is the, I'll open this up just a second. Intermediate express, here it is. So this app.js is inside the intermediate express directory, and this test.ejs is inside the views directory. So at first look, someone might think that it needs to be views/test.ejs, but the thing is that JavaScript will look by default inside this views folder, and that's why you need to have it as views, and then inside that you can put your files, and these files are by default searched inside the views folder itself, and not the folder of the app.js, right? If you wanted to use the folder of app.js, you could put slash, and that would not work. But if you're not putting anything, then by default you are using the views folder as the directory in which your EJS documents have been placed, right? Another thing, it's not done that you'll like do test.ejs all the time. You can do test simply. You can just put the name of the file, but that will not work just yet because that needs to have another line, which is app dot set view engine EJS, right? So what you are doing by writing this particular line is you're like setting that whatever views we are going to render, which is set by view engine, we have to use EJS for that, right? And so by writing test, JavaScript automatically understands that this is test.ejs. So you could choose to write .ejs here, but that's not done a lot of times. You just write test, and .ejs is added to this by default due to this line here, right? So if I go here and I refresh, right? So I always make that error that you don't need to have a dash in here and you need to have a space, right? This is not really common in JavaScript, and hence you may make that error a lot, just like I do. But anyway, you have to write view engine without the dash, and you have to write EJS, and then if you refresh, you see that this is still working even though we have just written test and no .ejs here, right? So these were all the basic things about rendering an HTML document. Now what you could have in here is, you could like write your whole HTML file, you could link things inside of this, you could use Bootstrap, and you could make any page that you've made till now, and that would work on this URL right here, right? Great. And you could like render multiple files from multiple routes, and that would work too. And all of them need to be inside the views folder, right? So this was like the really basic of rendering documents from your code, right? From your app.js. I'll just revise the steps once and I'll put them up here. 1. Make views folder. 2. Install EJS. Like this is something that's not too. This could be done before even your app starts, but just to put this, right? So install EJS. The next thing is use res.render. File name. And then there's an optional use app.set to set the default engine to EJS, due to which you will not have to write filename.ejs here all the time, right? Great. So these are the 4 steps to actually rendering a thing, right? And of course, and this includes right? So first you make your views folder, you make your view file inside of it, which is this file. This file is known as the view file, and then you install EJS. You use then you can use the res.render to render the particular document. And optional, even though this is like something you'll see in once you finish this course and you're doing some professional things, this is something you'll see 100% of the time, right? So even though it's optional, this is always done. So use app.set to set the default view engine to EJS, right? Great. So by using these 4 steps, you can render any document you want, and inside here you could write your normal HTML. I could put a p tag here, right? And I could say this is a paragraph. And now if I refresh, so you see 2 things. First off, the indentation is much better in a separate file rather than like doing res.send and then writing the things in here. The indentation is much better if you're writing everything in a separate file, right? Plus you could link style sheets, you could do styles, you could do anything in here, right? Great. Alright, so yeah, so that was rendering an HTML file, and yeah, so that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.